The monk sat quietly beside the river as leaves slowly floated across the water. The evening sky reflected softly on the surface, calm and undisturbed. He looked at the young man sitting beside him and asked gently, "Tell me, when did you stop enjoying your own life?" The young man looked confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. The monk smiled softly. "You have food to eat, a healthy body, people who care about you, and yet your heart looks heavy. What?" The young man stayed silent for a moment before finally answering. "Because everyone else seems ahead of me." The monk nodded slowly, as if he had heard those words 1,000 times before. The young man continued, "My friends are becoming successful. Some are buying houses. Some are getting married. Others are traveling the world. Every time I open my phone, I feel like I'm falling behind in life." The monk picked up a small stone and dropped it into the river. "Do you know why comparison is dangerous?" he asked. The young man shook his head. "Because it makes you look at someone else's journey so much that you completely forget your own." The river continued flowing quietly between them. The monk then told him a story. "When I was younger, there were two monks living in this monastery. One monk was admired by everyone. He was wise, disciplined, respected, and talented. People traveled from distant villages just to hear him speak. And the second monk? The old monk smiled sadly. He spent his entire life comparing himself to the first. At first, it was small. He compared how people spoke to him, how much respect he received, how intelligent he seemed. But slowly, comparison became poison. He stopped appreciating his own progress because he only focused on what he lacked. The young man listened carefully. The monk continued. One day, the second monk planted a bamboo tree beside the temple. He watered it every morning. But after months, nothing grew. Meanwhile, nearby flowers bloomed quickly. Tall trees grew beautifully. And every day, the monk became more frustrated. He thought, "Why is everything else growing except me?" The monk looked toward the mountains before continuing. Then one morning, after years of waiting, the bamboo finally broke through the soil. And within a short time, it grew taller than everything around it. The young man's eyes widened slightly. The monk smiled. "Do you know what the bamboo was doing all those years underground? It was building roots strong enough to support the height it would eventually reach." The young man lowered his eyes quietly, because deep inside, he understood the lesson. The monk leaned closer and spoke softly. "Most people compare someone else's visible success to their own invisible progress. You compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, and that comparison steals your peace." The wind moved gently through the trees. The monk continued speaking. "Social media has made this suffering even worse. People no longer compare themselves to neighbors. They compare themselves to millions. Carefully edited lives, perfect moments, filter happiness. But what most people show the world is not the truth." The young man nodded slowly, because he knew exactly what the monk meant. The monk pointed toward the river again. "Look at the water." The young man stared at the flowing river. "Does the river compare itself to the mountain?" "No," he answered softly. "Does the moon compare itself to the sun?" "No." "The flower does not hate itself because it blooms differently from another flower. So why do humans torture themselves this way?" The young man had no answer. The monk then said something that stayed with him forever. "Comparison is the fastest way to become ungrateful for the life you already have." The words hit deeply, because the young man realized something painful. He had spent so much time chasing other people's lives that he had completely ignored the beauty of his own. The monk continued, "There is nothing wrong with admiring others. But the moment admiration becomes self-hatred, suffering begins. Growth inspired by others is healthy. But feeling worthless because someone else is succeeding destroys the soul." The sun slowly began disappearing behind the mountains. The monk picked up 2 candles and lit them both. "Look carefully," he said. "Does one candle lose its flame because another candle is shining?" The young man smiled slightly. "No, exactly. Someone else's success does not reduce your worth. There is enough space in this world for your light too." For the first time that evening, the young man's face looked peaceful. The monk then gave him one final lesson. Life is not a race. Trees grow at different speeds. Seasons arrive at different times. And people discover themselves in different moments. Some people bloom at 20, others bloom at 40. But a flower that blooms later is not less beautiful. Silence filled the air once more. Then the monk asked quietly, "If you stopped comparing yourself for 1 year, what kind of life would you finally create?" The young man looked toward the river, thinking deeply. And perhaps that is the real question for all of us. How much joy have we destroyed simply because we believed we were behind? Because happiness does not come from becoming better than everyone else. It comes from becoming at peace with yourself, from appreciating your own path, your own timing, your own growth. So the next time you feel behind in life, pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and remember this: the flower that blooms last is still part of the garden. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more peaceful life lessons and mindful stories. Comment below, what is one thing you will stop comparing in your life? And remember, your journey does not need to look like anyone else's to be meaningful.